Hello, and welcome to the Red Flags Podcast.
The first podcast that takes love, sex, and relationship questions from Reddit and attempts to provide helpful advice based on the experience of two strangers on the internet.
I'm Greg Feeney.
And I'm Deb Gould. And we are those strangers. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Got my COVID booster yesterday, so had a bit of a rough night, but starting to feel a little bit better.
Congratulations. And you're here doing this. So
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
I didn't want to reschedule. It seems like our schedules are hard enough to make work together, so I didn't want to have to reschedule.
That is true.
So, last time I talked to you, you had a new addition to your household. How's that working out for you?
Unfortunately, the new bidet is not yet installed.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like to be a podcaster, you kind of have to have a bidet because there's it seems like tushy ads are all over podcasts these days.
It's true. And I mean, you told me about yours and I immediately ordered it on Amazon, immediately, and found out that I actually must have kind of a nice toilet because it doesn't just fit, but we're going to make it work.
Yeah. You got a fancy toilet. I
do. I have fancy toilets. I wanted a toilet that didn't have all those curves to clean in the back that get all nasty. You know what I mean? You don't clean your toilets, do you?
Oh God, no, not normally. in the division of labor, that one doesn't fall on me.
Well, thankfully. I'm sure the person who does clean your toilets would love my toilets because they're just straight and flat in the back.
I guess I'm trying to imagine what that looks like, but I can't. So I'm going to have to Google it or something.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
All right, cool. Well, I guess, so what do you have to do? Do you have to buy an adapter or something? Or
yeah, we're going to keep it. We want this to happen. We want clean butts, but we're going to have to get some additional hardware.
Yeah. Okay. Well, It'll be worth it. I promise. It's one of those things where you're once you have it, you're I don't know how I existed without this in my life.
Yeah, so. I can't wait to report back.
So I figured we could start out by talking about why we are doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and start since I was the one that bugged you first.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Basically, this is just my addiction that I already have. And I pretty much spend a lot of time on Reddit, and one of my favorite types of subreddits are advice subreddits, specifically relationship advice, love advice, sex advice, and parenting advice to an extent. So yeah, I always read these Reddits, and I tend to comment a lot, and I tend to read the comments, and I've kind of found that some of the comments are lacking. Some of the responses that get upvoted seem pretty terrible to me. So I wanted to maybe try to create a platform where we could discuss some of these issues, maybe with a little more nuance. It seems that in general on Reddit, the responses tend to be telling people to break up. Everything's a red flag, hence the name of the podcast. And, I tried to enroll my wife into this, and she was not interested. So then she actually recommended I talk to you, which when she said that, I was like, oh yeah, Deb would be perfect.
I love that. I love that, your wife was like, no, I'm not interested in doing this with you.
Yeah. Well, she, because to me, I was like, well, it might be nice for people to hear husband and wife sort of, tangle with issues, but she's just she has no interest in doing a podcast. So that went out the window.
So here we are. Yeah. And I mean, we have an interesting history around our own personal relationships.
Yeah, we sure do.
So I met you right after your first marriage ended? Right after your divorce?
Yeah, I was in the process of divorce. So I was separated. I've been married for, I don't even remember how long I was married now, maybe 4 years, 5 years. I had 2 kids, was separated, was splitting time with the kiddos, sharing the same house that we were married in. And I started a new job, and that's where I met you.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to be there to do the fun things like throw you a divorce party and look for a new apartment.
Yeah, so Deb was my was my OG wingman. She helped me find my apartment, threw me a divorce party, even got the bartender who I had a crush on to give me a kiss on the cheek, which was a nice little send off for a divorce party. And she was in my wedding as a groomswoman. I've always loved Deb's bluntness and her willing to tackle complicated topics. I feel like we both share that in common.
Yeah.
Not everybody is as blunt. So, yeah, it definitely, we're not afraid to say what we think.
Yeah. And I mean, I do not remember that kiss thing. So that's amazing. You spoke at my wedding, and then I subsequently got divorced later on. Mm-hmm. So, and I think we've always enjoyed talking about relationships and the problems and the good things along the way as well. So this makes perfect sense.
That's true. I remember I was driving to Indianapolis for Gen Con to play in a Netrunner tournament, and you were sending me a bunch of messages because you were having some issues. So I was just like on the way to Indianapolis, like talking to you about that stuff. But now I think I hadn't even seen you in a while at that point. So
yeah.
I guess we should say we used to both live in Houston, but then you moved to the East Coast.
Yes. And I'm here now in the snow.
Are you still, is that your plan to stay there still, or?
Yeah, my plan is to stay in Baltimore. Okay. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. So why do you think anyone should take advice from us, or should they even take advice from us?
No. I do think they should listen to us, because I think that like you said about your experience reading Reddit, just to share that I do not read Reddit. And so this is kind of my first dabble into that world. But I do find that there's a very black and white view of relationships, and it's either all good or all bad. And so there's a lot of complexity that gets ignored. And I think that's the problem we're hoping to fix.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Let's try to, I know for me, my personal goal is to add nuance and empathy to situations where people don't tend to allow a lot of nuance or empathy. Personally, I think we have an empathy problem. That's one of the things that I'd like to focus on. So another thing that's really annoying is that a lot of times in these Reddits, you post something and then they get locked like 5 seconds after. So it's really annoying because you're like, oh, I want to participate in this discussion. And then the thread gets locked and you're like, oh, well, that's it. It's over. So this is also my way of saying, you don't get to tell me when I can't or can't comment on this anymore. Just to piggyback on what you said. I think that you're right. We're not experts, so don't take our advice as like the golden rules or anything. But we've both been through marriage, divorce. I have kids. So we've both dabbled in the dating apps. I think maybe you more than me, since it's been about 10 years. So they were kind of new.
Yeah. And, we share that we keep trying, even when things don't work anymore. So,
yeah. And I do think that we're both the kind of people that we put a lot of effort into our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we were talking the other day and we'd read a lot of the same books, a lot of the same authors, and
Yeah.
And I have to add this to my list of credentials because I just found out about this like 2 weeks ago and I thought it was really funny. But my friend Courtney and Colin, who they have a couple kids now, and I was when I knew them before, I had already had kids, I'd already been married. They both got married for the first time and started having kids. And apparently they've always really enjoyed my parenting advice, which I didn't know that, but they said that around their house, whenever they have like a parenting dilemma, they always say, what would Greg do? And then they do what they think I would do.
That's really nice.
I was like, wow, guys, that's like really flattering. I was like, I don't like think of myself as like, like a perfect parent or anything, but just that anyone has actually, taken. And I think that's because my parenting and my relationships, I kind of take the same approach, which is like a direct approach. It's not beating around the bush. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, let's see how we can apply that to some of these questions.
Okay, so the first topic comes from r/relationship advice, and it was posted by user FrontRep123. Girlfriend gets dentistry discounts from her dentist with whom she had a threesome with years ago. I met a girl a couple months ago and fell head over heels in love with her. I have never felt like this before in my life. I had previously been in a long-term relationship, 12 years, and since I split up with my partner 3 years ago, I've had casual relationships during this time. This girl feels the same way. We just click and everything about the relationship is great, including the sex, which is the best we've both had. We are very open when it comes to talking about sex, and we got talking about previous experiences. I asked if she'd ever had a threesome. She said she had. It was with a guy, a girl, and herself. She went through a party period in her early 20s, and it was during this time. I've never had a threesome, so I asked her a few questions. I then asked, how did it finish up? She told me he came in her mouth. At this point, no issues. Then she said the guy is her current dentist, and she mentioned she gets discounted dental work and some bits and pieces free. She elaborated that he was her fuck buddy before the threesome happened, and that even though they parted ways shortly after the threesome, they remained friends. I said okay. Now, I'm not a jealous person, or at least I thought I wasn't, but after she told me this, I couldn't stop thinking about this, and it annoyed me. I've spoken to a few friends, including my girlfriends, and they understand how I feel. I spoke to my girlfriend about it and explained how I felt, and she offered to change dentists. I said no, it's okay, but it's been a few weeks now and I can't stop thinking about it. So my question is, am I being a jealous asshole here, or would it be an overreaction to ask her to change dentists after all? I also explained to her if she was in my position of having an ex-fuck buddy dentist lady who I came in her mouth during a threesome, and she was doing my dentistry work at a discounted rate. She said she understood how I felt. Any thoughts? Much appreciated. Thanks a lot.
Ooh. I mean, it's always interesting, right? Because I always have like a knee-jerk reaction. And maybe this is where people on Reddit stop, right? They don't have the conversation. Initially, I'm like, do not fuck up discounted dental. Like,
Yeah,
we live in the
cheap.
United States. This is gold.
Yeah, a lot of employers don't even give you dental insurance.
Right?
Yeah.
But let's break this apart a little bit more than that.
Okay, so he asked a question in his post. He only asked one question, so I figured it bears repeating. So let's just go over that. He says, is it an overreaction to ask her to change dentists?
Okay. So, I mean, my initial thought is kind of, there's jealousy here, right? And so I always want to know, where is that coming from, right? Is there some real reason that he should feel jealous? Is there an actual threat?
He mentioned he wasn't jealous of her having a threesome, so it only really came up when she said it was her dentist.
Right. So what is the issue, right? Does he not trust her to not do something else with this dentist?
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, it's like, how is this any different than any relationship you have that is just a friendship that used to be something else?
Right.
Like, there's nothing inherently sexual about dentistry.
No, I mean, if anything, it makes your mouth a way grosser place to deal with.
Like, would you like, would it be different if, say, it was her masseuse?
I feel like that would feel a little bit different. Like,
Yes.
you are naked.
Yeah, so I agree. I almost feel like that would maybe, I could understand that being a little weird, because although a massage is not sexual necessarily, it's a bit more sexual when you talk about it being someone that you've been intimate with prior.
Right. I'm also surprised because, this conversation they have where she is they're both clearly having an open conversation where she shares detail to the level of him coming in her mouth. I'm like, okay, well, you all have an open dialogue going, so why is there still some sort of distrust that is kind of feeding this fear and jealousy response?
Yeah, it's a little surprising to me that someone who's comfortable with that level of detail about their partner is going to get jealous in this scenario, because it seems like they have a pretty strong relationship. And I would say she seems pretty cool, considering she was just like, no questions asked. Oh, I'll change dentists if it bothers you.
Right.
And that I was going to say that when he says, is this an overreaction? My answer is yes, it is. But sometimes overreactions can be okay. Like, if there's not going to be any resentment here, like if he just literally can't get over it and he's just like, I'm sorry, this is really stupid. Like, I should be able to just get over this, but for some reason my brain's just being real dumb. Would you mind getting a different dentist? And if she's like totally cool with that, then I think that's fine. But I also think this is also an opportunity for him to do what you're saying, which is to find the source of the jealousy and maybe squash it.
Yeah.
And,
why?
Yeah, I think often in scenarios like this, you can take the easy road and be like, oh, please change dentists. Whereas it might be more beneficial for you and your relationship if you actually just figured out why you feel that way and tried to take care of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, especially when, the intro to this question, how, he had been in a previous long-term relationship for 12 years and has been single or dating for 3 years after that. So that's 15 years. So these folks are not 19 years old, right? Like, they have history. So I also feel like as the older you get, you're going to have a longer history, and something else may come up where maybe it's not similar. Maybe it's not the dentist that you're opening your mouth next to every month, but she's going to have other people in her past. And if he really can't deal with those being a part of her life in any capacity, like no matter how benign, this is going to just keep coming up.
Yeah. And I can't even imagine being in a dentist office and thinking like, yeah, I want to hook up with this person right now. It just seems like such a bad time for that.
It's horrible. Except you really are vulnerable in that seat.
This is true. There might be gas involved.
Fluids. No, but I think we're on the same page with this one. I think ideally they should figure out why and maybe figure out how to get over this and let her keep that extra money in her pocket with these discounted dental rates.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe he can get in on this sweet discount as well. Maybe
I like that.
Like, maybe they could do something together and he can also kind of nudge his way in there for the discount.
Yeah, but I do appreciate, like you saying, if you really can't get over it, okay, she's willing to change, which is great. I mean, that means she cares about the relationship.
Yeah, I would say that's a good sign that oftentimes she could in principle say, no, this is stupid, but that's just not how relationships work all the time. Sometimes you just have to decide that, you know what, this isn't a hill that I'm wanting to die on.
Right. I feel like we'll say that a lot in this podcast. My girlfriend sees my hobby as just something to do. My girlfriend, 23-year-old female, wants me, 23-year-old male, to go out spontaneously with friends and gets mad at me when I say no because I had plans to play video games with my friends. We've been dating for 2 years now, and the problem has come up more than once. I love going out with her and our friends, but when something comes up and I had a day planned to play video games, she gets angry because I'd never go out spontaneously with her. She says I make her feel bad because other girls' boyfriends will go out, but I won't. We see each other probably 3 or 4 times a week, and I intentionally plan the days I don't see her to play games because that's what I love to do, along with fitting housework in on the side. Is there a way we can meet halfway? I can't think of anything to prevent her from seeing this as me just wanting to play video games instead of seeing her. All right, so the question in this one is there a way we can meet halfway? Now, Greg, I imagine you have some experience with this personally from a gaming standpoint.
I do. I would say my position is going to be different than this guy's. He's obviously a little bit younger. You know, me being married, having several kids, my gaming is probably going to look a little different than his. But I can confirm that gaming is a legitimate hobby, and I think that's obviously one of the first steps that she would have to make in order for this to work out, is to recognize that it is a legitimate thing. So for me personally, like, I play a game called Quake, and that's my game. And I don't really spend a whole lot of time playing it. I probably spend about 30 minutes after my workday playing, and then I shut it off and go do family stuff or stuff with my wife or whatever. And that pretty much works out for everybody. I'm a little more flexible. I wouldn't say that I have to do that every day, and I don't have friends that I play with or anything like that. So it's a little bit of a different scenario. But I would say that it's understandable that he wouldn't want to change his plans, especially since he's playing with his friends. To me, it's not really that much different than having real life plans with friends. If you flake out just because your significant other wants you to do something spontaneously, I mean, maybe once in a while that could be okay, depending on, what comes up. If it's something really important, like, oh, we got like surprise tickets to a really cool concert that we wouldn't normally be able to go to, or someone offered to pay for us to go to like a really nice dinner that we probably wouldn't normally do, then yeah, I could see like making some sacrifices every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that, his plans with friends, whether they're virtual plans, whether they involve headsets, whatever, like it's the same thing as going out. So I agree with that. I think that, from this side of the story, at least, from this question, it feels like he's already really thinking about his partner a lot. He mentions that he intentionally plans days that he doesn't see her to play games. So he is already kind of shifting his use of time with her in mind, which is really great. So I'm not sure if the goal should be how can we meet halfway, because I feel like they're already halfway.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually. And I think this is really mainly the girlfriend's issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest problems here might be that it seems like she's comparing their relationship to her friends' relationships. And that's not good for anybody.
Right.
You know?
It seems a little immature to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if her true issue is spontaneity, then I'm sure that there is a way to solve that piece, right? The ability to be a little more spontaneous, because right now it does feel like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I have planned to see her. Other days, I'm doing housework and I'm playing video games, and there's no movement.
Right. So that's what I was going to bring up is, do we feel like this is just a proxy for another issue? Like, is gaming really what she's concerned about? Or is it she just wants some spontaneity in general? Because some people really value that and others don't. So it could be possible that he's not a person that likes spontaneity, but in order to appease her, he's probably going to have to be spontaneous sometimes.
Yeah, so I think really trying to define if that's the issue or not, because it might just be, like, she might not be able to be convinced that gaming is a legitimate hobby.
Yeah, maybe, but I kind of feel like if it's this important to him, that it's going to end up being a deal breaker at some point if she's not able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm sure he's already tried, but I think he needs to really make her understand that this is important to him. It's not just a game. It is a game, but it's a way to socialize. It's relaxing. Like, there's so many pieces of it that I think if you don't play video games, which I don't generally play many games, but I've come to an understanding of like the benefits it can have for people. And if she can't really wrap her head around that because it's not a part of her world, if he can somehow get her there, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's analogous to like if she was like, every Tuesday I get together with my girlfriends and we watch this TV show or something like that.
Right.
And it would be really weird for him to get mad if she didn't want to like spontaneously break her plans and go do something else.
Right.
So, yeah, I think the two things that need to happen here is one, she probably needs to do a little more work in understanding him and understanding his hobby. And two, I think he could do one more thing, and that would be maybe just make an effort to be more spontaneous on the days when they are supposed to hang out. Maybe add in a surprise day every now and then, or maybe do something sort of spontaneous. Like if they were planning to just hang around the house, maybe he plans something a little more spontaneous, and perhaps that could make her happier.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the two steps I see too.
Okay, so this next topic is very timely for the world we currently live in. This one comes from r/relationship advice, posted by user appropriate table 56. Seeing boyfriend versus killing dad. So basically, back in July, my family got COVID and it nearly killed my father. The doctors told him that he can't get COVID again because this time it might actually kill him. So with the new surge of COVID cases, he has asked my family to not go out other than for work and other necessary responsibilities. I've not been able to see my boyfriend and he's getting really upset with me. I've been trying to make things work virtually because that's the only way we can see each other right now. He's basically been telling me that he needs to see me in person. I told him I can't risk that because people in his family have tested positive for COVID. He basically says, well, I need attention. And I said, well, dead dad. What should I do? He's not respecting my family's want to be safe. So I'll start off by saying I think it's totally reasonable what she's asking. But I also would like to validate his feelings as well and say, depending on the type of relationship they have, like how long they've been together, that it's totally reasonable for him to be like, I'm sorry, I don't think I can be in this relationship if I can't see you. What do you think?
This is so complicated for me. And I think there are some additional comments on this one, right?
The poster is 21, and I believe so is her boyfriend. Everyone in her family is vaccinated, and so is her boyfriend. His other family members are not vaccinated, and she also mentions that she works in customer service and that her family members are teachers. So he lives with his family who's not vaccinated. She also mentions he's a very touch-based person, so he wants hugs and kisses and cuddles, which I think is a little weird because isn't that pretty much most people?
I'm a touch-based person as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound overly needy to want hugs, kisses, and cuddles from your partner.
No, but in the scope of, if we're thinking about this, I mean, they're obviously in a relationship where they do not live together. They live with their family. I mean, this is so challenging. COVID is just terrible. I think for me, after viewing this, the piece I kept getting stuck on is around the experience of the families, right? So like her family is vaccinated, his family is not vaccinated, but her family and her work in customer service and they're teachers. That implies to me that they're likely leaving the house every day, going into the world, and having to kind of assume the risks that go along with that.
Right. It seems like to me that although his family's not vaccinated, he is vaccinated, so he kind of creates a little bit of a buffer there, as long as she's not spending time around his family. And it doesn't really seem like he's the most dangerous vector in her life or in their life. It seems like, the teachers and the customer service jobs, those are probably more likely to cause a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand trying to just minimize the interactions you have with people that are maybe not as safe as you or as safe as you're trying to be. But in this instance, it feels like there has to be some in between. Can he be made a part of this family bubble? Is there an ability to spend a week together and then separate and isolate? There has to be some sort of compromise.
Yeah, I have to say that from his perspective and then reading what she wrote, it doesn't sound like she's trying too hard to come up with a solution that will make him happy as well. It seems like she's more taking the approach of like, it's a dead dad, so it just trumps you. Which
Yeah.
I get that obviously does trump your probably 21-year-old boyfriend. But it definitely sends a message that like you're not important enough for me to try to find a way to deal with this.
Yeah, and that's hard though, right? I mean, imagine being 21 and your dad almost dies. There's some trauma. And is told he will most likely die again if he gets COVID, and you could very well be the person that brings COVID home. Like, that's a lot of pressure. So I want to give her that. That's backbreaking pressure that a lot of people are dealing with.
Yeah, and specifically right now, we're in a surge of Omicron variant, so it would make more sense to be like even more diligent currently. then like maybe, in even like 2 months, possibly if levels go down, maybe she feels a little more comfortable. She also mentioned in another comment that on his birthday, she met him for dinner. She took a COVID test before and a few days after to be safe. It seems like she's already kind of dabbled onto the solution, which is that if she really wanted to see her boyfriend, what's to stop him from getting some COVID tests and doing a test before they hang out? Maybe even do 2 tests before they hang out. Maybe the day before they hang out. Maybe the day that they hang out. I mean, to me, that seems like it should be okay, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, I always want to make sure, like, we have a privilege check around, are people able to get rapid tests or able to access those things? But, I mean, that's how businesses are trying to function safely. So it seems like in a relationship, if you have that high level of concern, you could also take that same approach. I agree with that.
Yeah. I guess you can get the 4 free tests from the government, but that seems to be...
Yeah, but that's enough. 2 dates. That's only 2 dates, Greg. Exactly. That's what, 16 hugs? I don't know.
I do like your idea though of where they could maximize the time they spend together. Maybe they could spend several days in a row together, and then she could even, like, when she goes home, she could maybe stay away from her father for a couple days, and then if you mix in tests, and like you said, I think that's there is a aspect of like, okay, can these people afford to buy tests regularly? They're not cheap. So yeah, that definitely. I just think that the bottom line is that I think both of them are being pretty reasonable, and they should probably either figure out a way to sort of satisfy both, or I don't think this relationship is really worth it.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say, one thing she said in the question was, she said, what should I do? Which is a big question. But she said, he's not respecting my family's want to be safe. And so part of me, it's like they can do all of this, but has there been some love or respect lost already?
Yeah. And there was, I actually did a little bit of like looking into some of her other posts, which she posted a year ago about a boyfriend, which we don't know if it's the same boyfriend, but it's possibly is. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of she was feeling pressured in some ways, maybe like sex or something like that. So it could just be that she is getting a vibe from this guy that he just doesn't really care that much about her and her family, and that he's just trying to, like, get his rocks off or whatever. So
yeah, that could be enough.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then don't go looking for another reason to break it off. Just if you feel that way, then break it off.
Yeah. I wonder how many people have used COVID to their advantage for reasons like that.
That's interesting. Well, that'll actually segue into the last topic that we're going to cover, but we'll pause and we'll kind of come back to some COVID related and long distance relationship related stuff.
Okay, so this next one comes from r/sex from user uthrowaway72e.
The U is just always there, by the way.
Oh, good to know.
See, Deb's learning about Reddit right now.
We're going to learn this together. All right, so the title is, I ate my girlfriend's... Well, I'll read it exactly how it's written. I ate my GF butthole and don't know what to feel. That's beautiful.
I love it.
It's like a haiku. Okay, so we had some hot steam sex, and I was playing and biting her butt. She was bendy over doggy position, and I started eating her out and licking up her butt. And as I got closer to her butthole, I got more turned on, and she clearly got more turned on. In the heat of the moment, I went for it, and in the moment, was awesome. However, now I feel like I did something wrong. It's a weird feeling. Neither of us have discussed it, and we both acted fine afterwards. Aw.
Amazing.
Aw. I don't know why I feel so, like, poor dude.
I have a question, and it's sort of like, it's before we tackle this exact scenario. Is ass eating something that should be discussed beforehand, or is it something that you can just go for?
That's a really good question.
And does it matter how old you are? Because I feel like the younger generation is maybe like, I feel like ass eating is more of a thing.
Yeah, ass eating has like fallen into like third base area. Or I don't know. It's weird. I feel like, I mean, I hate to come from that like standpoint of a much older person, but ass eating was like, that's like a fetish level thing in my like sex growing up.
Yes, I think for heterosexuals 20 years ago, that's more of like it would be like a kink that only like certain people might have.
Yes.
Whereas now it seems like it's like just a part of it.
It's just normal.
Yeah. And I think gay dudes have been doing this for a long time. So I think.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I think I always feel like the heteros catch on late.
The other thing to mention, this question, we really don't have an indication of the gender of the writer.
Oh, that's a good point.
So we know that it's a girlfriend's butthole we're talking about, but we don't know the gender.
Yeah, it could be a girlfriend eating a girlfriend's butthole.
Yeah, could be a non-binary folk doing their thing.
Too.
We don't know. But either way, I feel my little heart goes out to them. I feel like I did something wrong. It's a weird feeling.
So I guess I would have liked to have known what the feeling was because I think there could be two reasons to feel weird. One would be if the feeling is like shame.
Right.
And then the other could be if the feeling was like disgust. And I think those are two very different feelings in this circumstance. So I kind of want to look at it from both sides and sort of maybe give advice depending on which way this person's feeling.
Yeah.
As far as disgust goes, I think that there's a lot of things that we do in sex that when you remove the context, they can be gross, right?
Absolutely. Most of it, yeah.
Right. So it's not unusual to say, well, I licked her butthole and then in the moment it was totally hot, but now when I think about it later, it seems kind of gross because you're missing a key component of the interaction, which is arousal. Right. Arousal will make us do things that we probably wouldn't do normally.
And things that you wouldn't just do with anyone.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right? Like, not everyone's butthole is created equal.
Definitely true.
Okay. So
whether they have a bidet or not is going to make a big difference here.
Yes, that'd be helpful.
I mean, I think normally, like, I would say full shower is necessary beforehand, but if you're in a pinch, I guess the bidet could work.
So, I mean, it's clear that, based on their experience, they are in this space and they are both into it. So it's interesting to walk away, for me at least, reading this. It's interesting to have that feeling of doing something wrong when it clearly felt very right in the moment for both of them. But they obviously didn't talk about this before, like you mentioned. They didn't, like, should there be a verbal, enthusiastic consent moment for ass eating? I don't know. But maybe if there's not, maybe there has to be some unpacking afterwards.
I guess we can talk about the shame thing and then also the disgust and the same, or it can kind of be one and the same. So there's an experience that I've heard relayed by people that I don't ever share or feel, but I've heard people say things like, oh, like I'm like masturbating to some porn and then as soon as I'm done, it's like gross. I got to turn it off immediately. like I'm like, ugh, like I don't want to see that anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to me. So I don't understand that feeling at like a personal level, but I've definitely heard a lot of people say that. So
I definitely have experienced that, but it's a little bit more like weird political. It's like, okay, I'm horny, so I'm going to use this to masturbate. But then as soon as I'm done, I'm like, oh shit, has this person been trafficked? And I have to like escape. That's my own problem.
You're like, is this? You're worried about if it's ethical enough.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Absolutely.
So you're okay. So you're in your horniness state.
I don't care.
May have made some poor choices as far as like the ethicality of your pornography.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, luckily, that's becoming a little bit of an easier issue to avoid. Like, there's more places, I think, now to get ethical porn. So
I think you have to pay more for ethical porn, which
Yeah,
is
it's generally
which you should, but that's also a problem. But anyway, okay. So you were talking about this piece of shame.
Yeah, so I think that's something that you probably have to unpack like yourself and be like, why do I feel shame? Like, is it something about my upbringing? Like, did somebody shame me? Did a parent shame me? Did a religion shame me? Or something like that? Like, we don't know enough about this person to know why they feel the way they feel. But that definitely could be something to look into, and it could be something to either examine on your own, or, you know, even something you could address with a therapist. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's probably bothering them that much that they would maybe consider it that bad, but yeah, maybe just considering that might help.
Yeah. And I mean, I think wording is important, right? So when they mentioned we both acted fine afterwards, right? Like, that language makes me feel like it was not fine, right? Like something was broken.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if they both enjoyed it, that's what matters, and maybe he should, or they should, touch base with her and just be like, hey, I just want to do a little post sex check-in. I think those are good. I think I know that personally I've had experiences where the post check-in revealed some stuff to me that I was incorrect about. Like, oh, it seemed like you really like this. And you're like, oh no, actually that really hurt. It's like, oh, well, dang.
Right.
Why didn't you say something? Like, I don't think this really applies in this context because there's unlikely to be painful sounds coming from this, but pain and pleasure can often sound very similar. And until you really know somebody really well, it can be difficult to gauge which reaction you're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that, having that post-sex checkup would be really helpful with this, even if it was just to say, hey, it seemed like you really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it, but is it something you'd want to do again? So you could learn a little bit more about what the experience was actually like for the other person. Especially if it was the first time you did this and there was no asking.
Yeah, and although this person didn't give their age, right? The way that they're talking about it makes it sound like they're probably younger. And I think it's really important that younger people get in the habit of discussing topics like this, because the more you don't talk about things, the harder it becomes to talk about them when you need to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's awkward when you're younger too, right? Like, we're never really trained well to have discussions about these topics. So we're being respectful of that, but it's really good practice.
So I'm going to give a little bit of Reddit-specific advice, which is seems appropriate for this podcast. If you're wanting to talk to your partner about something and you're sort of like feeling shy about what you want to say or what you want to talk about, this is a secret that you can use. Find a post on Reddit that basically talks about the thing that you want to talk about, and then be like, oh, hey, I was reading this post today. It was like this, this, and this. How do you feel about that? Like that's an easy way to bridge a conversation. Obviously, this is like past that point. Like, they already did it, so maybe that wouldn't work. But it could have worked beforehand if they wanted to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy. All right, so I'm hoping this person will feel better about this butthole.
All right, so we're going to introduce the last topic, and it seems like this will probably be a reoccurring theme on the podcast. We're going to take a topic at the end that basically is a question of whether this couple should break up or not. This one was posted on r/relationship advice by user The Trail That We Blaze. I like that name. That's pretty good. I, 26-year-old male, am thinking of breaking up with my fiancé, 26-year-old female. Context. I've known her for about 10 to 12 years and have been in a long-distance relationship for 6. Mid-2021, we decided to get married. Unfortunately, the pandemic has made it difficult to see each other because I live in a country with very strict borders. At first, everything seemed okay, but we started to have fights about the budget of the wedding. I didn't want to spend much because we would have to move while she wanted to go with an expensive wedding. Eventually, this led to her breaking up with me for a couple of days. She told me that we aren't on the same page, that if we can't even agree on a wedding, what are we doing, etc. We made up, and she finally agreed that under the circumstances, it was probably wiser to save up as much as possible, so the wedding was back on. The big plot twist was that 1 week before the wedding, her parents and my fiancé got COVID. This for me meant that it was impossible to go because it was too much of a risk. She insisted that we didn't have to meet. I should be able to only sign the paper without seeing her, and there is no COVID risk. This led to another fight where once again she told me I don't care about the relationship, and she once again broke up with me. A couple days later, she started to talk normally with me, but I told her I really had to think things through. She was really sad and sincerely apologized, saying the situation was too much to handle. And I understand her frustration. Long distance sucks. But having said that, it really scares me that if I do get married, every time we fight, she'll want to break up or tell me I don't care about her, and my anxiety is bad enough as it is. My mental health couldn't take a life of feeling guilty for things out of my control. Anybody has some advice? I have no idea what to do.
This one is kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right, so you're saying that, just for context, so they are both 26 years old. They've known each other since they were 14, potentially. But they've been in a long-distance relationship from the time they were 20 till now, when they were 26. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Can you imagine that? Let's just, before you even dive into this, can you imagine staying in a relationship long distance with someone from 20 to 26?
No.
Those people are stronger than I am.
True. It sounds, and they don't even live in the same country, so.
Right.
If they're still pretty young, they're 26. I guess I have like a lot of questions about this one, so I'm gonna just try not to make too many assumptions, but I don't really understand why they're getting married while they're still long distance. It doesn't even really say that they have plans to live together, which I think is like very important. I don't really know that it's very wise to marry somebody that you haven't lived with. And maybe they lived with each other before the 6 years that they've been long distance, but even then they would have been teenagers. So it's kind of like,
right.
It seems like they should probably do that step first.
And I mean, culturally, we don't have context, right? We know it's written in terms of I live in a country with strict borders. So I don't know. This could be a space where it's very common and regular practice for you to move in with your, husband or wife after marriage only. So that could be a piece. But regardless, yeah, I mean, this piece where they mentioned just signing the paper, like, why are you getting married if you can't even be next to each other in that moment?
Yeah, it almost seems like her motives are different. Either she's looking for marriage as like some kind of status symbol, which I know if it's a culture where you don't live together till you're married or something like that.
Yeah.
Marriage, I think in cultures like that, marriage is generally a status symbol, and it's like something that your parents expect you to do. And so it's almost like, it sounds like getting married for like succumbing to some kind of pressure or something like that. I mean, there could be other reasons, like it could be financial reasons, or there could be, maybe she wants to move and she can't until they're married, or I don't know. He doesn't really elaborate. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to tell. And I mean,
at 26 years old, she could be potentially thinking about egg viability, right? Starting a family. That's something I feel like if that's something that you do want, you start to feel that pressure as you're approaching 30, even though it's unneeded, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but let's talk about her manipulative behavior.
Yes.
Breaking up with someone in order to get them to do what you want. that seems like a form of abuse.
Absolutely. Yeah. The fact that she broke up with him, I mean, just in the course of this paragraph twice. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure those are not the only 2 times in the 14 or however many, 10 to 12 years they've known each other. That is a huge red flag. To be honest, that might be, if we were going to start to try to assemble like a top 10 red flags list, breaking up with you when things don't go your way is really high on that list for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that people that do this always do it on purpose, or do you think that it could just also just be that she's very emotional and doesn't know how to handle it very well?
Yeah, I think almost always it's not on purpose. And, there is a line in this where she says she was really sad, sincerely apologized, saying the situation was too much to handle. And I think oftentimes when, someone is faced, especially in a relationship, with something that feels impossible, right? They're talking, they can't agree. She feels it is utterly impossible, and the only obvious, next step is to walk away. I get that. I've definitely been there before. When talking about it and having a difficult and vulnerable conversation seemed like a way harder thing to do.
Right. I can relate to that. But obviously we're only getting one side of the story here, but
right.
Based on the way he's describing it, it doesn't sound like any of his wants or needs or whatever he's trying to communicate, they seem fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it might be a bit of an overreaction in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact that they decided to get married. It seems like together. They decided to get married, but then they fought about the budget of the wedding, which resulted in a breakup. And I mean, that in the course of your lifetime, that is a stressor for sure, but it's not in the top 10 of stressors of life.
Yeah.
So for that to result in you just saying, fuck it, I'm done with this.
Right. So
I mean, that just sends a message to your partner that they are not worth the trouble.
Yeah, and he mentions his anxiety, and I tend to agree with him when he says he doesn't want to live a life of just like always feeling guilty and that afraid that she's going to like leave.
Yeah. I mean, this is one where if we're looking at this from a standpoint of should they break up, and I would say if they're not able to or willing to go to counseling together, I think they should cut their losses.
Yep, I think I agree. I would say they should probably break up. I think her behavior just sounds incredibly toxic. And if they're having this much trouble right now, when they do finally move in together or get married, it doesn't seem like they've addressed any of the issues that they would need to do before they should do that. So I would say probably not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I brought up counseling is just because, they do have such a significant history together, even if they've been in different countries. I mean, at 26 to have known someone for that long, that's half your life. So if it's something that's not as easy as walking away from, having a counselor would be the only way to get through all of the issues that are kind of coming up in this relationship.
Right. And I think that, I think more people should be open to counseling and therapy, especially if you've already, you feel like you've already invested a lot in the relationship, or you feel like you're a good match, but that you're just sort of like missing each other in some way. And the thing about counseling and therapy, obviously, though, is that both parties have to be willing to accept changes and things about themselves, that they maybe don't want to accept, and to work on themselves. And that can be difficult too. So, but yeah, I would definitely agree that should probably be the first step.
Yeah, agreed.
I would also say, though, that if somebody does this to you where they say, I'm going to break up with you because of like something bad that happens, and it's kind of clear that it's a manipulation tactic, like as soon as you cave, they come back. I essentially think that's a moment where you would say, if that ever happens again, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's sort of one of those things, like you could maybe forgive it once if someone just had never addressed that about themselves, and then you just let them know that like, hey, this is not okay. I think it's great to have, and my list grew. It's grown since I was, I'm 41 now, and I would say that, since I was dating in my teens and 20s, my list has gotten longer of things where if somebody was to do one of those things to me, I will usually give them one chance. I'll say, obviously there's things where that's probably zero chances, but yeah, things where I would be like, okay, you get one pass. If you do that again, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes feelings and love can definitely get in the way and let you be a little bit more lax on 1 or 2 or 3 chances. So it's really difficult.
Yeah, been there, done that. Don't ever want to do that again. That was, I think one of the worst relationships of my life. It was on and off, 10 times. And it's such a neon blinking light telling you to just run the fuck away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, in the course of relationships, I think when people think about success, they just think about longevity instead of quality. And so, this might be a great thing to address quickly in our first episode, but, here we are talking about relationships and relationship advice. I've been divorced twice. I'm in a long-term relationship right now, but I think it is just as important to learn when is appropriate to end a relationship and feeling like just because that ended, it doesn't mean it's a failure, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's another thing that I realized later in life. I would say wasn't really until I would like gone through my divorce and all that when I finally kind of got the hang of that. Not every relationship is going to last forever, and most relationships won't. And just because they don't does not have to mean that they were failures. I think that you can end a relationship, and if both people are mature and willing to listen to each other, I think you can walk away and say, you know what? We gave it a go. It didn't work out. Best of luck. Life goes on, and you can look back at that relationship more fondly because, I feel like more and more people are starting to understand that it's like not every relationship should just be like burned and dead at the end. Like you hate the person, they hate you, you don't ever want to see them again. If that's the case, I think if your relationship ends like that, it's usually a good sign that either one or both people didn't do a good job of like setting boundaries and like probably ending it earlier when there was some like red flags popping up towards the beginning or something like that. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of episode 1 of the Red Flags podcast. I think it went pretty good. How you feeling, Deb?
I'm just enjoying chatting with you. So, it's a great baseline.
That is so true. Actually, that was one of the first things that I said to my wife when you were very enthusiastic when I pitched you the idea, which I wasn't sure if you would be. Like I didn't know if a podcast was something you would be interested in. I didn't know if you'd be interested in doing this topic or, if you even had the time. So
yeah,
my first thing was like, oh, wow, Deb seems like really interested and that's awesome. And then my second thing was like, even if nobody listens to this podcast, this is like so much extra time that I get to hang out with Deb because I don't, we're both busy. We don't
can't travel.
Yeah, we can't travel. We don't get to see. And when you do come in town, it's like you've got a lot of friends and family here. Well, I don't know about family, but you got a lot of friends here, and so it's just nice. Like, hey, I got like at least an hour a week where I get to sit down and chat with Deb. So
yeah.
Even if that's what we accomplish, then I'll be happy.
That's awesome. Okay, so some segments coming in the future that we're excited to bring to you is going to be a disaster of the week. So we will be, mostly Greg will be scouring Reddit for the worst of the worst.
Trust me, there's no shortage of disasters. This one will be a really easy assignment to find every week.
And, this was episode 1 of our season 1, which we planned for it to be 10 episodes. And, during this time, we're going to be toying with format, seeing what works, what doesn't. And we will definitely figure out ways for you to engage with us and share back some of your thoughts. And there's definitely an ability for you all to submit some questions. So we do have an email address, which is theredflagspodcast@gmail.com. And that's red flags with 2 Ds, like Reddit, REDD. We would appreciate voice memos if possible.
Yeah, and if you happen to, be a Redditor and you look at any of these Reddits, we would also appreciate if you see something that you think that you might like to hear us talk about it. You could send us a link, and we'll definitely consider it. So just basically any kind of feedback you want to give us, feel free to hit us up on that email, and we'll probably have some other social media up and running soon, and we will definitely relay that information when we have it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. I don't really know how to close a podcast.
Me either.
But I guess we'll just say bye.
Bye.